first, let's talk about the governor-elect. She's going to be taking the oath of office at 12 o'clock here in Richmond on Saturday. What are you looking forward to the most working with this new administration?
Well, I think she brings just a great perspective as a mom, but also with experiences in Congress. And she just brings a pragmatism to the table, which is, I think, really important in tackling both improvements in investment in K through 12 education to affordability, and also increasing our housing supply and access to obtainable housing is really important. We heard that time and time again, and she is really excited to hit the ground running starting Saturday.
All right. And she has talked about affordability. That was the #1 issue on voters' minds last year,
Yeah.
and they elected her as their next governor. So when we dig into the details, what are some things you're working on, perhaps with her or with other lawmakers, to improve affordability and put more money in the wallets and pocketbooks of Virginians?
Well, I think it's a couple-fold, both in the investment for the long term to make sure we continue to grow jobs in Virginia, and that's K through 12 investment. The housing issue is such a big one, and a lot of it's about supply. But how do we start to change mechanisms to also, if people have a larger house and they want to downsize, how do we look at mechanisms to free up that housing stock? We all know if you're locked into a very low interest rate, it's very difficult to get out of it. What are the different things we can do, either through tax structure or other things, to make sure people say, okay, we've got a little break, we can figure out how to downsize their house or change locations while staying in Virginia, while freeing up a house for a family that's been looking for one, right? We've got to put everything on the table. I think Virginians are looking for creativity, and now's our time to do that.
Redistricting is being discussed all week. We'll see what happens. I think all of us are expecting it to pass the General Assembly. It'll be up to voters to decide if they want to do mid-decade redistricting. Where do you fall down on this, and tell us why?
This is one of the things that we're responding to. It's not something we asked for or wanted, but certainly that I think Virginians have to respond to, and the question has to be put to the voters of responding to the things that are happening in Washington and the different states, trying to change the composition of the House and Congress. And this is Virginia's moment to respond to it. We're going to put that question to the voters.
All right. Tell me what else you're working on, because you and I were discussing PFAS, and I'm sure there's going to be some people in Prince William County, if they're not aware, they will be aware once they see this story. What do they need to know about PFAS, perhaps in their drinking water, what's happening in their community, and what you would like to do about it?
Yeah, PFAS are forever chemicals. Unfortunately, these chemicals don't break down. And these are chemicals that are in our drinking water supply now. And in the upper Occoquan that feeds most of Northern Virginia, we've got to tackle this. We've got to find the sources, whether it's industrial or other products that are getting into our supply, because ultimately it goes through a biosolid process when it gets processed through the treatment plants, and then also biosolids applied to farms and to our food supply. And so this is an entire cycle that we've got to tackle. PFAS are showing up everywhere now. And it's something, it's kind of gross to think about. It's just really hard to get rid of. And so we've got to tackle it where it's coming into our drinking water supply, as well as our agriculture supply and our Chesapeake Bay. We've got to tackle it. It's too important.
What does Prince William County need to address PFAS, in Occoquan and other areas? Is it state funding? Is it regulations? What does that look like?
It's really tracking the process through the Department of Environmental Quality and allowing the wastewater treatment plants to regulate under the Clean Water Act and ensuring they have the authority to do that. And from the state level, we need to make sure we also have the capacity for testing. The lab testing capacity is fairly limited, and we're looking to bolster that.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add that you're working on this session? I know it's going to go by very quickly. Anything else you'd like to highlight?
I think one neat bill we're working on is Faith in Housing bill. It's allowing faith communities and 501c3s to, if they have land, to help us tackle affordable housing and attainable housing, and looking at how we can get to yes and reduce the red tape of zoning barriers that they have to go through to build houses. We have partners out there. They want to be a part of that solution. Let's figure out a way to get to yes.
That's interesting. So there are organizations, faith-based, and they're just running up against hurdles right now, trying to build housing.
And unfortunately, we've had example after example in Northern Virginia and all over the Commonwealth where there's been communities of faith that wanted to build housing, not limited to just faith. Once you put housing on the market, it's available to everybody through the process, but it's the red tape involved of special use permits, an ability for NIMBYism and not my backyard sort of approach, where they're solving a really important community need. And we see that all across Virginia. We're hundreds of thousands of units behind where we should be, and that's impacting our ability to also bring in new jobs. When an employer looks, they look at the capacity of housing and the cost of that. This is something we've got to tackle, and we've got faith partners willing to step up and help us.
And what do you think about that housing affordability challenge, especially in Northern Virginia? There's so many things at play here. You've got around 6% interest rates, and you did talk about that, how some people, when interest rates were lower, they got 2%, 3% interest rates. They don't want to move because then they're going to get a 6% interest rate, and also the house they move into might be more expensive than the house they're about to sell, right? So there's so many different elements to this, and I know that's on the minds of so many folks in Northern Virginia, especially young families who are struggling to afford down payments, especially 20%. Is this an issue you hear about a lot?
It is. Just the dynamic of self-interest. I'd love to have my kids live in Northern Virginia, live in Prince William County in the future. I'm not sure they're going to be able to afford it, right? And I think those are all the questions they're seeing of a new generation looking at, hey, this new mortgage is going to cost me 8 times my salary versus 4 or 3, right? What are the interest rates? All those dynamics play into what those opportunities are. And I think it's our onus to make sure those opportunities continue to exist, just like we had.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I appreciate it. It's good to see you.
Okay, so I understand that you're looking at putting money, more money, in the pocketbooks and wallets of Virginians. You're looking at, down the line, potentially scrapping the car tax. Tell me about that.
Well, as you know, when the car tax was eliminated, we got rid of, I think, 75% of it back in the mid-90s. Well, the value of cars has crept back up, and the issue has become that it's, again, a burden on families, that you can't spread the cost out. You have to pay it all at once in October of the year, kind of right before Christmas and the holidays. And it's a difficult tax for people. It's the most hated tax in Virginia. But it's one that one of the few taxes that our localities by law are allowed to implement. Some charge more than others, but it is a tax that people do have issue with. Everybody understands the need, to fund our government, but they find this particular way at that particular time and in the particular amount of money they have to pay is to be a burden. Now, Governor Spanberger, and as part of her campaign, said that she wanted to put us on a path to finding a way to replace or eliminate that tax here in the Commonwealth. And this bill is something to support her efforts because it's a study bill to look at how we would deal with the car tax by either elimination or by providing a substitute source of revenue for localities, but to look at all the options. And it is a difficult problem. Because we already have a number of taxes that are, I guess in a lot of people's minds, are high enough on their residential property and their sales taxes and what have you. But we have to take a look at this creatively and hope we can come up with a mechanism to replace this tax and set us on the path that Governor Spanberger has made it her mission to accomplish in her first year.
And she will take the oath of office on Saturday at noon. What are you looking forward to with this new administration coming in?
Well, to be honest with you, what I'm looking forward to more is communication between the secretariats and the agencies with the legislature. It was a very difficult communications issue with the last administration. They did some things well. I'm not saying that they didn't. But at the same time, what's important is to increase the communication and the trust between the administrative branch and the legislative branch of government, and to be able to move forward and create better laws, based on compromise and mutual agreement.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Nope, that's it. Happy New Year.
Spanberger, Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, will be taking the oath of office on Saturday. What are you looking forward to the most with this incoming administration and governor?
Well, first of all, I'm looking forward to having the first female governor in the history of the state. Virginia is way behind most of the states in America on that. Number one. Number two, it'd be nice to have somebody we can actually work with upstairs. Governor Youngkin's been very hard to get along with. He obviously vetoed 3 times more bills than any other governor in the history of the state, 400 years, almost 400 bills. And we'll finally have an administration that we sort of share some values with, and we'll be able to actually hopefully get some things done together.
What do you expect to get done this session? I know the governor-elect has talked about affordability. Are there bills you're looking at right now that would help put more money in the wallets of Virginians?
Yeah, I mean, the number one message out of the last election was affordability, and inflation has caused a lot of increased expenses along with tariffs. And I think you're going to see some bills about making housing more affordable. You're going to see bills to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which I think will raise everybody's wages. You're going to see bills to make energy more affordable, make it easier for people to generate their own energy on their own homes. They don't have to pay a utility company to provide it with profit built in, et cetera. I think you'll see some bills to make people's jobs more protected so that people are able to earn a living and bring that money home. Things like paid family leave, paid sick leave, and collective bargaining for our 700,000 state and local workers so they can collectively work together to improve their pay and benefits.
Redistricting, you expect that to pass this week, that redistricting, mid-decade redistricting constitutional amendment, so then it goes off to voters. Do you think it will happen this week? And just tell us the arguments that you have on why you think this should be done.
Well, what we're going to pass tomorrow is a constitutional amendment that would then go to the voters to give voters the ability to tell us that they're willing to allow us to do a one-time temporary redistricting to deal with what's been going on in other states. And then we have to pass some enabling legislation as well and some funding for that later this session. And then ultimately, if the voters give us that power, we'd have to pass maps. But the reason we're doing it, I mean, nobody asked for this fight. What we're doing is responding on a temporary basis to what's happening in the states of Missouri, Texas, North Carolina just next door, and now Florida, it looks like, is going to do the same thing. And what they're basically trying to do is take power away from Virginia and Virginia's congressional delegation to basically allow the Trump administration to operate without a check or balance in Congress for the remaining 2 years of his term. And when we signed up for this Constitution in 1782 or so, we didn't sign up expecting other states to try and take advantage of the situation like this. We decided to treat each other fairly, and if other states are going to operate like this, I think we have to respond. We can't just, go into a fight with our hands tied behind our back.
Where's your head right now in terms of what you want to see with the new map? Are you looking at a 9-2 map or a 10-1 map? What do you think?
We just started those conversations literally probably this week. I've been focused on trying to get the framework in place, and I don't really know where I stand right now, but I think if we're going to have a meaningful response to what's happening in other states, we need to make sure that Virginia's voice is heard and we have a meaningful response. And I think it's also important that voters look at whatever maps are drawn and they view them as being legitimate maps and maps that keep communities together, and we have to consider those factors. And I haven't actually seen anything on paper yet to be able to say, I think that looks fair or looks good or whatever, and so I'm waiting to see that.
A couple of other constitutional amendments you're discussing too. Tell us about those.
Well, there's 3 other constitutional amendments. We started that process last year, and we're about to wrap that up tomorrow. But there's 3 of them. The first one, from our point of view, takes gay hatred out of our Constitution, our gay marriage ban out of the Constitution, because it's now unconstitutional, and puts the right to marry into the Constitution. The second one gives Virginia the affirmative right to vote, and then it takes this old 1904 Jim Crow language out of the Constitution, which says if you want your right to vote back, you have to go to the governor on your hands and knees and beg for it. And the third one puts the right to contraception and then the right to abortion services, reproductive health care services under Roe v. Wade into our Constitution so that it's protected against future legislative action. And I think those 3 things will modernize our Constitution.
Anything else you'd like to talk about?
There's a million things to talk about, but I got a committee meeting I got to get to.
I'll let you go.
I'm actually passing a bill that's of local interest. It's a very local bill.
Let's hear it.
But, where do I start? There's about, in Northern Virginia along the Potomac River, the George Washington Parkway runs from the Beltway down to Alexandria and then from Alexandria down to Mount Vernon. And it's actually part of the National Park Service, and it's a road controlled by the federal government, and it's policed by the United States Park Police, allegedly. For about the last 10 years, the last 8 years, the United States Park Police has really withdrawn from doing any traffic enforcement after the murder of Bijan Geisar, and the community rose up and was very unhappy about what the park police, who basically shot the unarmed accountant 4 times in the head, and then were never held accountable for it. And after that happened, they just basically stopped doing any policing. So right now on the GW Parkway, there's hardly any speed enforcement, there's hardly any DUI enforcement, there's hardly anything. And so I've drafted a bill which basically would give the Fairfax County Police the authority, or the state police, to conduct traffic enforcement operation on the GW Parkway on either stretch, or if they're able to reach an agreement with the National Park Service to install traffic speed cameras out there so that somebody's enforcing the traffic laws. There's a huge number of accidents, especially on the stretch of road that I represent from Alexandria to Fort Belvoir. Ever since the military moved 15,000 new employees in under BRAC in 2005, there's been a massive increase in traffic volume between the Wilson Bridge and Mount Vernon as people try to get down to Fort Belvoir. And there's been a ton of accidents. People can't take left turns. There's 85,000 cars today on a road that was designed for people, taking a scenic drive down to George Washington's house, looking at the Potomac River and the nice scenic countryside. Yeah. And I'm trying to get some actual traffic enforcement out there. I actually sent a letter to the chief of the United States Park Police about 4 months ago and asked them, once again, can you please conduct some traffic enforcement? And the chief of the Park Police wrote a memo back to me and said, I'm too busy doing Donald Trump's enforcement stuff in Washington, D.C. I don't have time to focus on your road back.
ICE enforcement?
They said they were assisting with executive order.
DC safe again.
That one. Yeah. Executive order 1452 or something, and part of that is immigration enforcement. Part of it is just doing more law enforcement around DC in general, but they basically said we're too busy doing what Trump wants us to do in downtown, and we don't have time to do speed enforcement on your road in Fairfax. So that's part of why I put it in.